So here's another debate clip where Anton thinks he makes a good point. Libertarians accidentally admit that they like regulation. So right off the bat, this is a bit dishonest on Anton's part, because he seems to be trying to imply that I was trying to conceal the fact that I'm in favor of certain kinds of regulation, even though I literally began the debate by saying yes, I think there should be regulation, just not done by the government. But second of all, and more importantly, this is actually a non sequitur. In case you're not familiar with what that is, a non sequitur is basically an argument that doesn't make a point. If you're left scratching your head wondering what point someone was trying to make after hearing their argument, it was most likely a non sequitur. In this video, Anton tries to argue that the government needs to be there to inspect buildings to make sure that they're safe. I rebut by saying we can have private companies whose job it is to inspect these buildings to make sure that they're safe, much like Underwriters Laboratories does for our electrical appliances. Anton's whole response is basically to say, ha, so you think buildings should be inspected? And I'm like, yeah, I do. What's your point? It would be like if a statist tried arguing that we need government in order to have roads, and a libertarian responds by saying, well, we can have a private company build the roads, and the statist responds by saying, ha, so you think there should be roads? It's like, yeah, what's your point? It's just as dumb. Anyways, let's get into the video.
By pointing out that, oh, we could have these free market private institutions fill the role of government. By making that point, you're conceding that these regulations are beneficial and that they do have beneficial impacts. So if we're granting that, like, no, we need these functions, we need people, testing the safety of our food and making sure our water isn't toxic and filled with lead and making sure our buildings aren't going to, collapse and fall on your head and kill you during an earthquake or whatever. If we're conceding that all of these functions are indeed beneficial, why do away with the government regulations then?
So what Anton is doing here is basically conflating two different arguments. There's the argument that our buildings should be inspected for safety, and then there's the argument that the government specifically should be responsible for doing this. These are two very different arguments. Anton seems to want to argue as if advocating that buildings be inspected at all whatsoever is equivalent to arguing that they specifically be inspected by the government. Just because I'm arguing in favor of private companies inspecting buildings for safety doesn't mean that I'm trying to concede that the government regulations are beneficial. On the contrary, I believe that many of these government regulations are overly burdensome to construction companies. You see, a lot of these regulations don't actually have anything to do with safety. You see, what happens is a lot of the times these big companies want to muscle the smaller guys out of business. So what they'll do is they'll lobby the government into crafting regulations that may be easy for them to comply with, but are burdensome on the smaller competitors. So these regulations might require a small company to do a bunch of small little stupid things that don't really contribute to safety and just add a cost and a burden. And like I said in the debate, there's plenty of perfectly valid reasons why I might want a private company to do these inspections and not the government. Because a private company has to actually work for your money, unlike the government, which can just help itself to your money, there's an incentive on them to provide a high quality service that's not there with the government. So a private company might do quicker inspections, cheaper inspections, more thorough inspections, more accurate inspections than the government. Anton never talks about this during the debate because government is like his little religion to him. So yeah, the biggest problem with this whole argument is that, in addition to being a non sequitur, it also conflates two very different arguments. Anton has more of these debate clips I plan on tackling in the future. If that's something you're interested in seeing, then stick around. Until next time, this has been Philosophos making stupidity play dead. Everyone take care.